Hi, so today I'm just gonna talk over my speed paint and I'm also gonna give tips here and there. And yes, I just noticed that there is a time-lapse option on Medibang. Nobody told me, but I'm definitely gonna use that on the next drawing tutorial I'll do. Okay, so for the first step, I call this the contour step because basically you just put some vague shapes to define the face. So lay down the base color first and make sure that the base colors layer is underneath the sketch because that's gonna be our guide. Then airbrush the blush color on the side part of the eye like so, and then connect the blush to the cheeks for the blush effect and paint the lips. Make sure to give them that heart-shaped lips. By the way, if you want some explanation on how I do my layering or just layering in general, make sure to hit that like button in the face. Okay, back to the drawing. Now that I have an idea what shade look like, in order to shade the shadow, I first identify where the light source would be, and I just kind of decided, up here. So feel free to decide where you'd like to put your light source. After that, I put like a curve shape underneath the eye. So that's called eye smiles. Basically, I want to make sure that she looks like she's been crying all day. I want to make sure that she doesn't see the light of day. Okay, for the eyelashes, I put it on a separate layer just above the skin layer that you have because I want it to have their own life. Don't copy me though, I accidentally put it on the wrong layer. Okay, I fixed it. After that, I put the eye color on her eyes. And keep in mind, I only used like 5 different brushes and one of them I created myself. You don't really need like 100 fancy smanchy brushes to shade your art. Just do your best. Yeah, a lot of this I just put a harsh line and then a shade and blend. One thing that helped me a lot with blending is the eyedrop tool. Basically just get a color that you want using the eyedrop and then use that to blend. Okay, so now that we're done, and yeah, I did put the eyebrows on the same layer as the skin since it doesn't really bother me that much. I skipped a bunch of this part on the blending, but I'm gonna explain. For the most part, especially what I did on the eye part. Okay, so this is the skin. I put in harsh shadows. Okay, and then I use the same shadow on the sides, maybe on the middle. It depends where you want to put the harsh shading, but most of the time I'd put it on the side part and on the opposite side, and use the eyedrop tool on the base color to blend. And then I just lower the opacity, eyedrop on the middle part of those colors together, and then you blend. For the highlights, I put it underneath or where most likely the light source would bounce off. Remember to put the harsh highlights on another layer. On the skin layer, that's where I put the blending of the highlight. The areas where I put the highlights most of the time are on the side of the eyes, on top of the eyes, on the nose bridge, side of her mouth, and at the top of her mouth. And on the lower side part of the eye is the thing that I just told earlier. So yeah, back to the drawing. For her bottom lashes, I just used the sharp pen tool and put 1 to 2 strokes depending on the thickness of her lashes. Just follow the shape of her eye. And that's where I also put the line art on her mouth, her nose, and I reshaped the face a bit. Also put lines on the top part of her eye and also on the side part of her face down to her neck. I just like the way the line art looks, and no, it's not to cover the fact that I can't shade properly to define her features. It's just that I didn't want to cross the line between semi-realism to the uncanny valley. Alright, next step is the hair. Okay, so just fill in your hair, add as much details and flying strands that you like. Oh, and also, this is how I get my skin shading a little crispy. Basically, use your sharp brush right here and put some shadows. Just follow along the shapes of the bangs and smudge it along the shape of the face. Okay, back to the hair. Oh, we're doing the eyes. Okay, so what I do with the eye is I put a generally darker color of what I want the eye to look like and put the color that I really want, maybe a little lighter, and put it on top. Make like a half-eaten donut, then make the top part of the eyeball a little darker because of the shadow. Do the same with the other eye, and I put like boxes of highlight underneath the eye, sort of like reflecting light, and as well as the shadow part of the eye. And for that, I make sure to lighten up for the shadow color and desaturating it because eyes are very shiny. But yeah, I just don't do much details on the eye. I just want to convey like this is an eye, and hopefully you guys understand that it is. Okay, now that I'm done stalling with shading the hair, we get back to the contour step. I just airbrush the light source along with the shadow, then I put harsh shadows using the sharp pen to define the flow and the shape of the hair. I'm also going to use harsh shadows as my guidelines for later. After that, I kind of didn't like the color of the hair, so I was finding the right color to match the original character's hair. I used watercolor and the square watercolor to make the vague shading for the strand, and they kind of blend the same way as I do with the skin. And I do it a lot. Maybe you noticed I only work one layer at a time, or I only work with just the skin first and then the hair. It's just because I can get easily overwhelmed, and that'd make me work less efficiently and just get lazy with my work. And I make sure to take my time with it, and of course that's just me. And just make sure you're comfortable doing what you like and work at your own pace. Along the way, you might notice that your shading, or maybe just my shading, is looking kind of cloudy. It's kind of muddy though. So I just kind of use the sharp pen that I have right here along with the eyedrop tool here so that we can use the color we want and then define the strands. I use it for shadows as well. This is basically torture because of how many strands I chose, but trust the process, it will pay off. I make sure that the sharp pen changes opacity by pressure so it kind of blends in. Now, the next thing I'd be doing is this thing, the light shade. I don't know what to call this, maybe the going away effect. I just do it with parts that I don't want to get any darker, so I make them lighter. I saw this effect first from Yana Natsu. Make sure to check her out. Okay, for another sharp shadows technique that I use, I put them on the corners of her hair like here. It creates like a line art effect. It just makes the hair looks sharper, in my opinion. Okay, now I do the highlights. Just scribble some random shapes in there along the strands and make sure to curve it along the shape of the character's head. For the highlights though, I don't really want to use the color white. I just make sure to use a color that is very light. I reshape it until I'm satisfied, erase a little bit for the strand effect, and use the smudge to the top part as well as the bottom part. Make sure to leave the middle as it is, as you don't want the highlights to look like just a smudged white thing on the hair. I also came back to the lips here. I just added another harsh shading here with textures on it. Do the same with the upper part of the lip as well. And I just kind of lower the opacity here so that it's not so harsh. And then we also get to keep the textures as well. I came back to the hair again just to touch it up, added a few more shadings using my sharp pen so that it doesn't look flat. And also don't be afraid of shading your drawing. It creates dynamic, it makes your art pop, and it adds flow. I'm just gonna skip this part, but know that I did the same process for every strand. The way that I did this shading on the hair right here, because the bow is on top of it, I put a harsh shadow on top of it. Okay, another part that I don't like doing is the clothing. The reason why I use a bright blue color at first is because I wanted to see if there's parts that I missed, and also because my background is white, I couldn't really see if I just painted it white, which is also the reason why I changed the background as gray just for this part so I could see what I'm doing. Same thing as the other layers. I started with the contour step. I added harsh shadows using my sharp pen. I started to paint the bow first because I generally don't have any idea how to paint clothings. I just gonna copy from other artists. For the clothings though, I copied Ryota for that. Make sure to check him out, and Hiyana's style. I just kind of combine them together because I like it. For the bow, I didn't want it to go any redder, so I just bounced off a hue and used a dark desaturated blue tone and blended it. I don't know why it works. I just know that red's complementary color is green, so maybe therefore red plus blue is equals to green. I used the same technique on the hair as well. Now that I'm done with that side, I just kinda did the same thing on the other side but darker since it doesn't have any light source. I just noticed while shading the uniform, my computer didn't record it. I don't know why, I must have forgot to record or something, but let me just show you how I did it. Okay, so for example, this is your clothing. For white clothings, I used like a very bright, unsaturated yellow color for it. It makes it easier for me to shade it as it creates contrast better than white. The thing that I like to do with clothing stitch that happens in this area is I put like a curved line to define it. It makes the clothing look more like a clothing. And remember to put that in another layer, and I just use the sharp pen for this. I then add another layer to clip on to the base layer. I use the watercolor brush for this and blend. I usually avoid blending near the stitch or the harsh line I put in because on the clothing it does that. And to pronounce the stitch even more, I adjust the brush just a little smaller and then blend. You can erase the shading near the stitch area just to pronounce it even more, or use an airbrush to make the shading smoother. Also, here are my color palette for this clothing. You can also put a very thin and very subtle line art on the stitches just to make it more defined if you would like. Okay, I'm gonna do the same thing on other clothings. I'm just gonna skip through. I also added sharp shading on the bow because it looks weird that I only used airbrush and watercolor. It seemed like it doesn't belong on the painting, or it looks like it's just a random red blob there, so I just defined the shape of the bow. We're basically done with the drawing now, but there's just some parts that I don't want my viewers to see and some parts I want them to focus on. I want you guys to focus on her beautiful face. First thing I did was to merge all of the layers together, like so, and also like the side part of her hair, and then put Gaussian blur on it with a level 5. Same thing with the bottom of her hair. Now it kind of looks weird, but trust me, just use a smudge, then do like a kind of back and forth motion to blend it. And I added like a heart on her eye, like a glowing heart effect. The way I did this is I added another layer on top and put a very bright saturated pink with a vaguely shaped heart on top of it, and I put another layer of white heart. Now you're going to change the blending option of the pink heart to add, just to make it glow, and put Gaussian blur on it. Then boom,